Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it's a little bit something different. It's an album review. It's a review of the 1977 punk rock album, Never Mind the Bollocks, Here Comes the Sex Pistols. Now, before I get around to sharing more of my thoughts on this album, I want to give a special shout out to Vontae for requesting this review. And if there's another album review, movie review, TV show review, or topic that you'd like to see me discuss in the future, feel free to donate to either my PayPal or to my Patreon. A link to both is in the video description down below, and I will try to get your request as soon as I possibly can. Now, I'm just going to lay it all out here. I have next to no experience reviewing albums, so this is something that is very new to me. So I'm just gonna give it my best shot, and we'll just see how it goes. But I do have a little bit of experience when it comes to music. I was in choir for many years in high school and in college. I did musical theater. I even played piano. So I do have a little bit of experience when it comes to the realm of music. So it's not like I'm completely just throwing myself head first into the deep end here. I will also admit that I don't really have a whole lot of experience with the punk rock genre. Like I haven't really heard like a ton of punk rock songs. Like that's not really something that is a genre that I'm the biggest fan of. So I've heard some punk songs. I've already heard a couple Sex Pistol songs numerous times, and I've honestly already really enjoy them in Anarchy in the UK and God Save the Queen. But I don't really have a whole lot of experience in terms of the punk rock genre past, some of the stuff that I've heard from Fear or some or Black Flag or some of the other punk rock bands that were featured in like the decline of Western civilization, for instance. So I'm definitely a novice, and I will just admit that. So, some people think that I'm a total, wanker for some of my thoughts on this album. I honestly would not be that upset about it because I really don't have the same experience when it comes to reviewing punk rock or reviewing albums or songs in general. But like I said, I'm just gonna give it my best shot, throw my hat in the ring, so to speak, and see what happens. Now, before I start talking about the album as a whole and the individual tracks, might as well talk about the band in general. So, the Sex Pistols is a band that was formed by band manager and part time producer Malcolm McLaren. Now, a lot of people have said things that they were created specifically so he could play punk rock music at his store, and a lot of the reason why the band was created was purely for aesthetic and just values that didn't necessarily connect with the whole idea of them putting a band together to spread a message or to just, play punk rock. And so there's been a lot of controversy when it comes to the band over the years where people think that they're posers and so on and so forth. And I can see the argument and I can kind of get where some people are coming from, but you can't really argue against the influence that this band has had, not just on the punk rock genre, but honestly in just rock in general. Like you can hear that influence when it comes to certain tracks of this album and certain elements of them. So it's one of those things where, yeah, I can see why some people have kind of soured on the Sex Pistols over the years. But at the same time, like it is a legacy that has lasted as long as it has for a pretty legitimate reason. And the band is mostly comprised of Paul Cook, Glenn Matlock, Johnny Rotten, and Steve Jones. Now, Sid Vicious is also a part of the band, but he didn't join until later on. Glenn Matlock really was the bass player at the start. Then he wound up quitting because he was tired of just a lot of different things in regards to the band and just a whole experience, of being a part of it. And he just decided to just stop and just leave the band. Didn't want to deal with the bullshit anymore. And so the Sid Vicious was brought in, and Sid Vicious is really more of a figurehead for the Sex Pistols. He's more of a marketing guy. He's kind of a gimmick, to be perfectly honest, because he didn't really have that much skill when it comes to playing guitar. He didn't really offer much to the band other than he looks like a punk. He's got the punk rock aesthetic, and he just brings a certain attitude about him and a certain unique charisma. But other than that, like, his on-stage presence is really all that he really had, because his talent really wasn't that good. And he only played on like 2 tracks on this album because he genuinely sucked. Like, he was not skilled at all when it comes to playing bass. He did the bare minimum when it comes to his bass playing on this album, on the 2 tracks that he was a part of. And it led to Steve Jones basically doing the majority of the guitar work, playing his parts and the bass parts. Uh, so I got to give Steve Jones like massive praise for what he did when it comes to this album, because he did the work of like 2 people for throughout most of the album. Paul Cook, he's a really talented drummer, and that definitely does show up in this album and all throughout it. And I genuinely do feel that Johnny Rotten is one of the better punk rock vocalists of his time. He has a very unique sounding voice with a very different kind of inflection. He has a certain attitude about him, but he also has a certain tongue in cheek aspect that he brings to his vocals. So it's just fun to listen to. It's not as abrasive and harsh as some other punk rock singers, and it still hasn't lost power though. Like, it still has power, it still has a lot of impact, but it's very snarky. And I think the snarkiness really does fit the band well, fits a lot of the tracks well, and fits the genre of punk rock well in general. I disagree with a lot of his politics, but I'm a fan of his when it comes to his vocals. Now, a lot of the album, Nevermind the Bollocks, like a lot of the tracks, yeah, they were, written by Johnny Rotten or, Steve Jones and Paul Cook. They worked, all 3 of them worked together. Glenn Matlock also acted as a co-writer for a large majority of tracks for this album. Um, and of course, the 2 main tracks that everybody thinks of when it comes to this album are God Save the Queen and Anarchy in the UK. And that's for a very good reason, because those are 2 genuinely tremendous tracks, and like easily the best tracks on this album. But the album has some other tracks that are definitely worth listening to, and have their own merits. So the first track of this album is called Holidays in the Sun. And this isn't one of my personal favorite tracks, but it's fine. I like a lot of the sound effects that are utilized for it, especially in the beginning with the sound of the jackboots thumping that starts out the song. And I just like the idea of the song. It's a song that Johnny Rotten came up with when he and the band were having a holiday in Berlin. And so they were seeing the perspective of what was going on in Berlin at the time with the politics and everything, and they were comparing it to what was going on in the UK at the time, and in comparison they felt like what was going on in Berlin was better. Like what was going on in Berlin was more ideal compared to what was happening over in the UK at the time. So they decided to create a song to really stress and to showcase that contrast, and that's where they came up with Holidays in the Sun. I think Holidays in the Sun, like, it's got a good overall beat to it. There are some lyrics that I like, you know, incense around sound and a 2-inch wall. Um, but you know, there's a lot, or you know, a cheap holiday and other people's misery. But there's a lot of stuff when it comes to this track where the lyrics are just kind of simple and just kind of okay at best. The composition of the guitar work and the drums are just fine. I think that there are better guitar solos when it comes to other tracks on the album. Um, and it is a little repetitive, but like it's fine. It's not bad at all. It was the fourth single on the album, but it's not one that I honestly would listen to a ton. But I definitely don't think it's a bad album. I mean a bad track. I don't think it's a bad album in general, but I don't think this is like that, like one of the lesser tracks of the album. It's just one that I'm not particularly like super fond of. Like it's fine. It's got some decent vocals as well by Johnny Rotten. And I do like the overall concept of it, but it's not one of my favorites. Track 2 I actually like a little bit more despite its very dark subject matter. Track 2 is called Bodies, and it's about abortion. It's based on a true story of an actual girl named Pauline from Birmingham who got an abortion. I think there was like articles about it in the local news, and so that's why that became something that was a focal point for this track. I mean, abortion is something, and a lot of social issues like it are like they're the epitome of punk and you know anti establishment and counterculture, and this is a song that became rather infamous at the time, and in some ways still is because of just how it pulls no punches when it comes to its depiction of abortion and the pain that comes from that. Uh, and despite all of that, like it's not just the subject matter of the song that makes it good. It's not just the the whole way that the lyrics are presented and displayed and handled throughout the track. It's also other things. Like I once again, Johnny Rotten's vocals are on point, but I think it has some great guitar work, especially when it comes to the opening of the song. Steve Jones just killed it. Like I love the opening of this. It's dark and it's foreboding and it's all kinds of intense, and it does a great job establishing the mood of the track. And I also like some other aspects of the song when it comes to its structure. Like I legitimately really like the chorus. I think it's a rousing chorus, despite the fact that it's a very dark and bleak and just really messy song in some ways, but it's deliberately done that way because it's just trying to really emphasize the overall pain of abortion and how much it hurts, and you know the whole stuff about, you know, she was an animal, she was a bloody disgrace, you know, dragged on a table in a factory, illegitimate place to be, and a packet in a lavatory, die little baby screaming, body screaming, fucking bloody mess. Like, you know, I'm not a discharge, I'm not a loss in protein, I'm not a throbbing squirm. Ugh. Like, you know, there's some really good intense emotions when it comes to the lyrics and the overall structure of the song. And it has a really rousing chorus, you know, body, I'm not an animal. So it's a song that sticks with you. Uh, and it can be catchy at times, which makes you really remember the content of the song and the whole social commentary aspect of it even more because definitely has some catchy aspects of it. Now, track 3 is called No Feelings. My feelings on this one are mixed. I like the fact that it's got a pretty decent structure when it comes to the way that the vocals work with the instrumentals, with the drums and the guitar. It does have some elements in it that are kind of catchy. Uh, that definitely have a little bit of a bop to them, but the lyrical content is just mediocre. A lot of it is just about like, oh, hey, there's this girl who has the hots for me, but I don't have the hots for her, but she can't get the message. And apparently it's based on a true story. It's based on something that Johnny Rotten was actually dealing with because his father uh, adopted a lot of kids. Like he was a foster parent. And so there was this one girl who his father was taking care of, and she had a crush on Johnny and just wouldn't get the hint that Johnny didn't want anything to do with her. So that's why he decided to write the song. And it's fine, but it definitely is one of the weaker tracks of the album. Another one that's kind of weak for me is Liar, which is track 4. The reason why this one is fairly weak is not because of the instrumental work, it's not because of, the guitar and the drums, like, it's really due to the lyrical content and just the overall, way that the song plays out in general. It's just very, like, blah, "Lie, lie, 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 you lie, 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 tell me why do you have to lie?" Like, and then the whole stuff too, like, "You're in suspension, you're a liar," like, the whole chorus, it's just, eh. And I think it was a song that was intended to be another, like, fuck you to their producer, Malcolm McLaren. He was saying all these things, but he doesn't really mean them, and the band was writing this to basically give him the middle finger, and, like, it's immature, but, like, that immaturity is definitely something that's a big selling point when it comes to this album and the Sex Pistols in general. So, I don't mind the immaturity, but it's just so simple and, like, boring. I really think this is one of the more boring tracks of the album other than, 17, which I think is the worst track on the album in general. Uh, but it picks up with, track 5. Like, you had a little bit of a lull there with track 4, and 3, but you really, get to a genuine gem here with track 5, which is "God Save the Queen." This is the one that was this just massive, huge hit and made the Sex Pistols a household name. It's also why the Sex Pistols were considered to be so controversial in the UK and why a lot of people wanted them banned because they actually dared to besmirch the good name of the Queen. Like, they were sarcastically talking about God Save the Queen. Like, they weren't being serious about it. For a lot of people, like, that was like the equivalent of like burning the American flag. That was appalling. That was abhorrent. That's why Johnny Rotten actually got stabbed in an alley because of the way that some people reacted to this song. But there were a lot of people that really felt like the song spoke to them and really gave them a voice that they didn't necessarily have, and it allowed them to express their feelings through the song. Uh, because there's just a lot of shit that was going on in the UK and England at the time, and things were just an absolute trash fire. Like, literally, there was trash in the streets, and the difference between the rich and the poor was just massive, and a lot of people just felt like they were not only just downtrodden, but they felt like they were being screwed over. and they felt like there wasn't a future for them. But and a lot of them probably had this whole like, "Oh, fuck the queen. Fuck the queen, fuck her, fuck this shit." And the Sex Pistols created a song that really emphasized that what a lot of people were feeling, including the people behind the song itself. And it's just an instant classic, from the verses to the chorus to the outro in particular. Like the outro, I love. No future, no future, no future for you. Like it's simple, but it's really catchy, and it's just a really a good way to just end this song that in a lot of ways was like a lot of people's anti-establishment anthem at the time. And even simple like lines like this, we're, just talking about, God save the queen. We mean it, man. We love our queen. God saves. Like you think like, okay, that's just very simple and whatever. But like, if you know the context of it, it's actually really great because it's Johnny Rotten and company taking the piss on the Queen, and the mad parade that everybody is going on daily where they're praising the figurehead. um but the lyrics are good, the vocals are great, but I mean, the guitar work is on another level. There's some really good guitar solos and other stuff involving, that aspect of the song. Maybe there isn't a solo on this one. Maybe I'm going to confuse the Anarchy in the UK, but there's some really good, backing tracks and guitar work in the background and some good. It just has a good beat to it. Like it's a very memorable song in a multitude of different ways, in large part, due to the work of Steve Jones, Paul Cook, and Johnny Rotten. Now, the track 6 is called Problems. This is one that's fine, but it's another one that I'm not like blown away by. This is also one of the longer tracks on the album, and it does drag. Like I think it honestly could have been like half as long. The verses are okay, the chorus is alright, the instrumental break is man. Like, there's just a lot of things about this are just decent. I think, like, the outro, for instance, is really lazy, just going, "Problem, problem, problem, problem." Like, it is a track that's kinda problematic, ironically enough, but, like, it's still for the most part like not necessarily like completely terrible. Like it's just kind of there for me. The problem is kind of you. Like like the lyrics are like the problem is you, or I'm like, well, I don't think I think the problem is actually who wrote this song. Cuz it's just so repetitive, and like it doesn't really seem like the message is really anything that's really that interesting. So yeah, it's just there for me. Track 7 though, 17, I think is just it's just crap. I think this is an absolutely terrible song. This is easily like the worst track on the album. One of the Sex Pistols' worst songs. Like, okay, I get what they're trying to do here with some of the verses. You're only 29, got a lot to learn. When your mummy dies, she will not return. It's like, we like noise, it's our choice, is what we want to do. So I think a lot of it's trying to be maybe a bit of an anthem for punk rock fans, but like it's just such a lazy song. Like, and it's intentionally that way, but it doesn't make it good just because you are openly talking about how you're a lazy sod. It's like, yeah, you're a lazy sod, and you're very willing to admit that openly. But this is still a lazy song, and it still kind of sucks. Not kind of sucks. It still sucks. It's not a good song. At least not to me anyway. I don't think this song is good at all. Like it's just everything about it's just the epitome of forgettable or just somebody should have been thrown in the bin. Like replace 17 with no fun. Like why wasn't no fun included on this album? Why did you include something like 17 on the album? Like there's nothing to this particular track that really stands out in a good way. But things definitely go up in terms of the quality with track 8, Anarchy in the UK. Like Anarchy in the UK is my favorite song on the album. I like God Save the Queen. God Save the Queen is good, but I love Anarchy in the UK. Like it's just the absolute just sheer brash intensity and just fuck you nature of it. I love like it's just one of the quintessential punk songs for a reason. Its vibe, its attitude, like it's so raw and real and just kind of generally badass. And just memorable from the very first verse. And even before that, with the way that Johnny Rotten goes right now. Like even the way that he starts the song and then how he starts the verse. I am an antichrist. I am an anarchist. Don't know what I want, but I know how to get it. Like it's just a really great way to start off the song. And it just continues with this just pulsing energy throughout and just a great amount of just really skilled guitar work by Jones uh, um, throughout this track. Like some really good guitar solos and just a great song. And I love this particular line. I thought it was a UK or just another country. Yeah, so it's just that's something that's just so straightforward but so devastating that you can have somebody who's from the UK who just doesn't even talk about it, like it's the UK, United Kingdom, it's just another country to it's just nothing special. Like if you get to that point when it comes to your country and you're just like, "Oh, and I thought this was the USA, but it's just another country now." Like that's what it would be like if somebody's like, "Hey, I thought this was the US, but it's just another country." Like that's something that's really powerful. And I also love the ending of this song, you know. I get pissed, destroy. Like yeah, it's just a classic song. It's a great track. Honestly, they could have just stopped here and then it would have been a good album, just with that being the closer. But there's still some decent tracks after that. Like, I actually like Submission. I know Submission's a track that is definitely has a mixed reception, but I like this track. It's it's the band's fuck you to Malcolm McLaren for asking them to make a bondage song. They're like, yeah, sure, we'll make a song called Submission, but we'll make it literally about a submarine mission. So fuck off, you anchor. Like I love that. And it's catchy and it's fun. It's a fun track. It really does emphasize the Sex Pistols' whole attitude and their flair and everything that they were trying to do with the album, this tongue-in-cheek aspect of their whole persona and just the vibe of the band and like you have a whole like solo at one point that's like with a kazoo and but it's a catchy it sounds like something from the 60s, like an old 60s song. um Submission, going down down, dragging me down. Submission, I can't tell you what I found. Like, And I just love the bass work and the guitar work in this. You know, the down, 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 and down, 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 and down, 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 and down, 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 down. So yeah, I like Submission. Although I got to be honest, is this about a submarine mission or is this about going down? Like going down on a girl because you could honestly interpret it that way too. You got me pretty deep, baby. Can't figure out your watery love. I got to solve your mystery. Submission going down, dragging her down. I can't tell you what I found. Like there's a lot of stuff with these lyrics where you're like, yeah, I can't figure out your watery love. Got me pretty deep, baby. Like I could see it being one of those songs as well that has an extra, double entendre attached to it, so to speak. But yeah, it's a fun song. I actually really like Submission. Um, Track 10 is called Pretty Vacant. It's another one that I enjoy quite a bit. Um, it's got one of the better choruses of the entire album. Oh, we're so pretty, oh so pretty. We're vacant. Oh, we're so pretty, oh so pretty. We're vacant. And I think a lot of just the overall tone of the track really works well. I like that the lyrics are just another further extension of the Sex Pistols' whole attitude. This a lot of ways could be their theme song, or a theme song for a lot of people. A lot of young fans of bands like the Sex Pistols, or who are just like, we don't care, we don't give a shit. I don't believe your illusions because too much is real. Stuff your cheap comments because we know what we feel. Stuff like that. We're pretty vacant, but we don't care. And I think a lot of it is probably just more angst and more like firing back at people who, you know, yeah, they call a lot of these younger people and a lot of people like the members of the Sex Pistols vacant. Vacant wastes of space, and when it comes to their place in society, and so this is the Sex Pistols just embracing that and just being like, yeah, we're pretty vacant, but we don't give a shit. What now? Like, and I like that. I definitely do like that about the Sex Pistols in general, and this track, and yet again, like there's just some good vocals by Johnny Rotten in this, and some solid guitar work by Steve Jones, as well as drum work by Paul Cook. And track 11 is called New York. It's not one of my favorite tracks either, but there are things about it that I really like. I really like the guitar work in this in particular. I think it's got some good drum work as well, but I'm really big on the guitar work here, and what Steve Jones did, especially in the opening. I love the opening riff for New York. The lyrics, meh. I think a lot of it is like a fuck you to like bands like the New York Dolls, which I think is kind of absurd. But I get where I get where they're coming from, because really it's a rant about the New York Dolls because Malcolm McLaren briefly managed them prior to the Pistols. So a lot of this is Malcolm McLaren's influence coming through. And so not necessarily a lot of influence from the other band members. So this definitely feels like more of a Malcolm McLaren specific kind of track that he was like, "Oh, you can do this album, but you have to do this one, and you have to do a bondage track for me, and you have to do this track where you just tell the New York Dolls to piss off." And I'm like, "Okay, all right." And Rotten definitely brings it with his vocals, but it's just one of those tracks that, because of the lyrical structure and because of everything that's behind it, is just, It's not the most memorable or the strongest track of the album, but, like, there are some great things about it, and I think the opening guitar riff is one of them. EMI is another one that I just am not really a big fan of. This is the Sex Pistols just taking the piss out of EMI because EMI signed them to the record deal. They misbehaved so badly that EMI dropped them like a bad habit almost as soon as the ink was dry on the contract. And it's just kind of funny that, okay, let's make a track where we're just taking the absolute piss out of EMI. And it's like when you know the context of what happened, you're like, they had every right to drop your ass. It's like one of those things. It's like, oh, well, they got too many outlets in and out. Who EMI? Unlimited supply. There's no reason why. You only did it because of fame. Who EMI? Like it's. So did you. Like you did this shit for fame too. Don't give me a break. The only aspect of this track that really is at all worth a shit is like some of the guitar work and like the chorus. EMI. EMI. Like this song even ends with like I think like rotten burps or there's a fart or something. Like it's such a sophomoric track, and I know a lot of Sex Pistols songs are that way, but like this one just was like so much more sophomoric than any of the other tracks on the album other than 17. So it's kind of in the same vein as 17, where it's just kind of lazy filler track for me. Um, Not really a great way to end the album. Um, but I still like the album overall because even when there were tracks that I wasn't really big on, there were still some elements of them that I did appreciate, like the guitar work, the drums, and some of that, some of those other aspects of the songs. Until next time, till the next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you later. See ya.